Hello and welcome to today's program brought to you by LD18, and that is how to persuade voters with a great conversation. And my colleague today is Chris Hawkins. You probably know her from Outlaw Dirty Money. She's a precinct committee person at LD18. She's been a field organizer for Democrats and has done lots and lots of door knocking. So today we're basically going to talk about conversations. What you want to do is have a conversation with a voter when you visit their doorstep. We have new messaging, and we've got 8 talking points, which I'll go over. We'll talk about conversations at the door and steps for connecting quickly and building a relationship. Think of it this way, if you canvassed before, you knock on a lot of doors, nobody answers, and you leave a piece of material behind. We're going to give you that new flyer, but there's going to be that magic moment when you actually get to talk to a voter. You might be nervous about it, and we're going to try to make you confident. And at the end, I want to open it up for attendees so everybody can share their best canvassing experience. So let's start out with the Be a Voter strategy. So we have an election coming up. I think there's 9 weeks left to go. And people wonder, well, does Legislative District 18 have a plan? And the answer is yes, we do have a plan. And it is be a voter. Notice how that's different than saying to people, we'd like you to go out and vote. It's much more persuasive if you ask somebody to adopt an identity as opposed to, giving them a command or a suggestion. So that's why we've focused on be a voter. And here are the goals for Be a Voter. We want to persuade as many persuadable voters out there to vote for Democratic candidates. There are going to be 2 lists of 2 kinds of people. First off are going to be what we call reluctant registered Democrats and independent voters. And by that, I mean, these are people who did not vote in the previous midterm election. And we want them to vote in this one, obviously, to keep all of the dangerous Republicans out of office. We're also going to be persuading newly registered voters, both Democrats and independents, and we want them to vote for Democrats in the election on November 8th. We're calling for people to volunteer for the Be a Voter campaign. If you sign up by simply going to LD18Dems.org. And when you go to the home page of LD18, you'll see there's a button on the left, a blue button, and it says volunteer. All you need to do is just click on that, and you'll get an invitation to the kickoff for PCs and volunteers. That's going to take place on Zoom on Thursday, September 8th. You can sign up to knock on doors. You can be a driver. You can request a companion to go with you, a buddy, or you can be a buddy. And of course, we're looking for drivers as well. So go to the homepage of LD18Dems.org and you can sign up. So let's turn now to messaging and talking points. How do you stop a bad guy from destroying democracy? Like Mark Fincham wants to do and Carrie Lake wants to do and all the other Republicans want to do. And the way you stop them is with a good guy with a ballot. If you've heard of Rachel Bitkofer, she is a Democratic political scientist, an election forecaster, and a Democratic strategist. She spoke at the Democrats of Greater Tucson meeting, and I was very impressed and moved by that, as were many other volunteers, PCs, and LD18 leaders. And she identified 3 things that, we all need to do. And number 1 is how Republicans, they don't talk about themselves. They didn't have a strategy in 2016. They don't have a strategy today. And the old conservatives are gone. I think they're going to sit out the votes. The typical conservatives that you and I grew up with, it was all about, lowering taxes and loosening regulations and so forth. But here's what they do talk about. They talk about us. They talk about how we're woke. I heard Republican Governor DeSantis go on and on and on about a no woke platform. Don't really know what that means, but they've used it as sort of a blurb, an epithet about Democrats. And they also say the Democrats are socialists. We want to combine the means of production, some such Marxist idea, which is total baloney, but it plays with the Republicans. Oh, and the other point they raise is that we want to teach CRT in public schools, grade schools. And I doubt if any of them can really define what CRT is. I mean, it stands for critical race theory, but it's not anything you're going to find except maybe in a graduate course or online someplace. It's not taught in schools. It's not taught in grade school or high school or any school except maybe a law school. So that's what we're up against. And of course, nothing unites or motivates people more than having a common enemy. So the key word in that is enemy. We're no longer, honorable opponents or democratic adversaries. We're the enemy. The Republicans are invoking all sorts of warlike language, and they've identified us as the enemy to be destroyed. And then, of course, they have all these bite-sized messages, what they call dog whistle messages. It's maybe just a word or two, and they're always about Democrats, defund the police, which the Democrats never embraced, is just one of many examples. Democrats are socialists. Democrats want to teach CRT. Democrats want to shame little white kids about being taught about slavery. And her point was, we should basically incorporate that strategy into our own. We should do all of the above ourselves. Because bear in mind now, Arizona Republicans are dangerous, and I'm not kidding about that. The New York Times says the Republican Party in Arizona is an anti-democracy party. The Washington Post said that the Republicans in Arizona are packed with Trump-backed election deniers, Mark Finchem being one, Blake Masters being one, all of the crazy people that are on the Republican side running for office. And the New York Times said that Trump-backed conspiracy theorists are trying to take over Arizona elections. So the key word to remember in all this, if you're talking about the Republicans, is they're dangerous. That's the term you should use. And we have tons and tons of issues that are going to be working to our benefits. This is just sort of a quick collection of them. The Republicans took away reproductive rights when they overthrew the Roe v. Wade decision. They have been starving public education in Arizona since 2010. They totally ignore climate change, and they want to roll back any regulation that would reduce pollution. They don't care about gun violence. They're all for the Second Amendment, guns for everybody all the time. They've successfully eroded our right to vote. There was a petition that was trying to get on the ballot to roll back all of these restrictions. But the court said, okay, it can be on. And then the next day it said, oh, we changed our mind. Point being, it's not going to be on the ballot. Censoring teachers, they want to put cameras in the courtroom to view your kids and the teachers, just to make sure that nobody is saying anything woke or, that nobody's talking about CRT. Of course, they want tax cuts for the rich. Trump gave a huge one to the Republican donors a couple of years ago. And the Arizona legislature passed a so-called flat tax, which is essentially a tax cut for the rich people. And they love to demonize immigrants. And that's something I take personal offense at. My mom was an immigrant. She spoke with an accent her entire life. It was really clear that she wasn't from around these parts. And my mom was a red, white, and blue college teacher. She contributed to the community. And I just despise the fact that the Republicans are demonizing immigrants. So here's some of the stuff that you're going to get when you sign up and attend the kickoff. And that would be a simple script. And this is primarily for people that are new at canvassing. We want to give you just sort of some words that you can read and adopt as your own and edit as you wish. You know, hi, is this Jimmy Stewart? Great. You know, my name is Larry Bodine, and I'm a neighborhood volunteer for the Democratic Party. And I'm here because I'm very concerned about what might happen in November. So this is the front side of the handout that you'll be distributing. It's a 5x7 cardstock printed on both sides. And it spells out in bullet points that the Republicans want to criminalize abortion, not only the mother, but also the doctor and anybody who helps them. They want to basically eliminate public education. They passed a school voucher expansion, which will take $1 billion out of public schools. And of course, all the vouchers will go into private and religious schools. And, you know, it might not be your religion. They deny climate change. You know, they had a guy in the U.S. House, was the head of the environmental committee, who said that climate change is a hoax. But, you know, we live in Arizona, and they're going to cut our water usage by 21%. So I think we know that climate change is happening. Of course, they want to erode the vote. The thinking behind this is that if fewer people vote, the Republicans think they will win. And that's probably true, because we need to marshal all of the independents and all of the Democrats and get them out to vote, despite all the obstacles that have been put in our path. Here's the backside. The Republicans are censoring teachers and they're banning books. You know, if the book has to do anything with slavery or the fact that all people are not created equal in the U.S., or at least they're not treated equal, that we have a history of redlining, and they want to just ban those books. They don't want the kids to know anything about it. They want a sanitized history of the U.S. Of course, they want to cut taxes for the rich. You know, it's not as if the rich have more money than all of us, but now they pay a lower percentage in taxes. So, you know, that's what they want, because those are their donors. As I mentioned, they're demonizing immigrants, and they're giving away tax money to private interests. The Republican treasurer does not invest in anything having to do with climate change for the state treasury. The governor basically has done as little as possible to protect us from climate change and COVID. We're getting nothing from the Republicans. Now, let's turn to the nuts and bolts of this. Conversations, connecting, and building relationships. Wouldn't it be great if you were born as a natural conversationalist? Then you wouldn't need any sort of training at all. You could teach us. And there's this website called 16personalities.com, and they actually identify 2 types out of 16 types that are people who are natural conversationalists. You can look up the letters ENFP and ESFJ if you want to, but in a nutshell, well, one type is called the campaigner. This is someone who is extroverted and goes with their gut feeling. They know what's right. And they embrace big ideas and actions, and they give people hope and goodwill. Perfect person you want knocking on voter doors. The other one is called the counsel. Also extroverted, also goes with the gut feeling, but they're also attentive, people-focused, socially friendly, they're decisive, and they give guidance to other people. I think we all know people who are great conversationalists and persuaders. These were people I always admired my entire life. I wanted to be one of them, but the truth is, I was a nerd. Yes, that's right. I was introverted as a little kid. Making it worse was that I was kind of chubby, which made me a direct target for all of the bullies. And even worse, I was studious. I would raise my hand in class, and that annoyed all the bullies. And then, you know, I wore glasses at an early age, you know, thanks to my mom and dad's DNA. However, it turned out I was a good writer. But for me, talking to people was a little harder. So one day I figured, I'm going to get a job. I'm going to find some kind of a job where I can be a writer and get paid for it. And for me, this was the glory days of Woodward and Bernstein in the Washington Post. I decided to become a newspaper reporter. And I got to tell you, when I became a news reporter, that changed everything. Suddenly, I was thrust into a position where I had to be forward, sometimes aggressive. But the key thing was, or two key things, were that I always had a question ready. There was a question that I had in the top of my head and 5 or 6 behind that. And then, of course, I had to get my story straight. I didn't want anybody accusing me of making mistakes in print. So I had to listen actively. I had to listen to what these people were saying and record it. So even though I was a nerd, I learned how to converse. I found a new set of techniques, and you can too, because they're all learnable techniques. So let's hear a little bit from Chris Hawkins. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, thanks, everybody. Yeah, thank you, Larry. What I want to start off with is just a general high-level view about human beings. We all know. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to ask, and maybe you can just put up your hand really quick. How many of you are fairly new or new to canvassing? Probably. Okay, there's one. The reason that I bring that up is because some of you may already know a lot of these things. Some of you may not. So you can learn, of course, as you go about something new. The point that Larry made, that all of this is learnable, is because underneath all of it, we're automatic. We're social creatures. We naturally want connection, and we want to feel good in our interactions. Doesn't mean we're all conversationalists, but we do want that social acceptance. And just remembering that helps us feel better when we begin the contact. So there's a song, I think it was Rogers and Hammerstein. I don't remember if that's exactly the right authors, but, getting to know you, getting to know all about you, and getting to like you and hope you like me too. Now, I know that was about romantic love, but it's really about connection in general. And that's really what we're talking about here. So let's keep going. How do we do this? How do we approach a door, especially for a new person? I've been studying a lot of TED Talks, and one of the talks was done by a comedian who does improvisation. And a lot of the things he talked about were things that come from the mindfulness community. And it was really kind of interesting and surprising. Of course, we know, most of us who have already been doing this, to approach the door or approach any stranger with some openness and curiosity. And then he talked about presence and being mindful and being in yourself, being authentic and in yourself as you approach a door. As you approach any stranger, we don't want people to feel like, oh my God, I have to say this stuff and I have to say it right. And, the issues and the talking points that Larry mentioned should be in the back of our minds already. Most of you are very well aware of these issues. So it's not like you have to have them right in front of you. Even newcomers usually come to volunteer because they know about these things. But the most important thing I found working with new volunteers is their confidence and building their confidence. So I asked them to be present, to be open as they go with me. But the buddy system is the other thing I wanted to mention. I highly agree with that and would be willing to help others in this way as well. Anyway, instead of being afraid of what you're going to say, think adventure and discovery. This is a new opportunity to talk to someone. And then the next major thing is to notice the surroundings and the details. This is because we want a conversation starter. This is the human part of it. This is how we socially interact when we meet somebody in a grocery store, when we, I love that shirt. Where did you get it? Or you're going to a yard. What was that plant? I love that plant. Or I never could get this plant to grow. How do you do it? These are the things you would ask, but think about what catches your eye. That's the first thing that you do when you approach any stranger. And again, I'm saying here again, it applies anywhere you are, not just at a door. And this stuff is learnable. And the reason it's learnable is because you can learn how to be more aware, not just of others and of things and surroundings around you. In my job, I had to do this all the time as an interviewer going into an office. What kind of pictures do they have on the wall? If you get inside somebody's house, what kind of posters and art do they have up there? It's like finding out, giving you a clue. That's the other part of this. It's about who they are. Okay. All of those things help you go with your gut about the person, the thing that a lot of us do naturally. This is how you get in touch with your gut and who they possibly are. And it's learnable because we can become also more aware of ourselves, how we're feeling, what we're thinking, how open we are, all of that kind of stuff. And you can practice that with all kinds of techniques that there's resources to do that. We'll talk about later. These are steps, by the way. So get in the mood. So we want to create a quick bond. So the person, let's say, comes to the door. What do you see? What's the body language like? What's the facial expression? These are things you figure out as human beings because we're automatic in 2 seconds, right? We know if they're sad or happy or aggravated or who is this person. Right away, you know that. You probably heard about boundaries. You probably heard in canvassing, don't get too close to the door. Well, that's because there's a social distance, right? With some people, it's like, hey, stay away from me. Other people are like, hey, and they'll extend something out, not necessarily at a door, but, they're more curious, so they're more interested. And then lead with that relatable thing that you noticed. Hi, I'm here to, whatever the introduction is, I like to personally say, I'm in your neighborhood and I'm concerned about some things. I'm a neighbor who's concerned about some things. I don't bring up Democratic right away. Now, it depends on your turf. If it's a Democrat, it's a Democrat, of course. Use whatever introduction LD18 has given you. But what I like to start with is something relatable, like, wow, that's a lovely plant. Where did you get that? And they'll like respond or not respond. And then you'll have an idea. You'll see body language. You'll see how they talk back with you. And they might even say, well, who are you? Like, oh, and then introduce yourself. But the idea is to put your body language and tone to work. So what they have found through studies is if you mirror a person and support them, if they're tired and you could tell that, or they're mad, you show empathy. If they're happy, show excitement. There's a bunch of others. Okay. And again, these are things you can learn. These are things about becoming more aware of what's around you, including people. But the idea is that it's about becoming more aware of who that person is so that you can connect. So listen, learn, and share. I mean, if we're talking about, this is where it comes in. This is the nugget of bonding and connection, which a lot of us do naturally and a lot of us don't. Listen, share, and learn. And we'll talk more about active listening and so forth, which you hear in deep canvassing a lot. But it could be over topiary, a funny dog, the color pink. It doesn't matter what it is. It just has to be authentic and relatable to you. And then you can introduce yourself. And as I said, there might be a different order to that, but you want to find that relatable thing. So here's the point. You want to grow that bond that started with that kernel. And you listen and you riff off of conversations. And I will explain what that means. I'm a musician, so when they talk about riffing, they're talking about improvising. You hear something, you play off of it, okay? And that's how we naturally talk as humans. You find something or just something comes up and you go, oh, I understand that, and I blah, 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 and you tell your story. So small talk begets big talk. That's the thing to remember about getting that kernel of relatable, short, quick connection at the door or anywhere. And the second big thing, and the part of the small talk begets big talk is all about listening. So we listen and we observe. We actively do this. That provides respect. And I'm going to go off a little bit on this right now. And later, if you have questions on more details, we can talk. But when a person feels heard, when they feel listened to, they found in studies at the Center for American Politics, or the Future of Politics at USC, they found that 40% of the time when the other person had felt heard, completely heard, they changed their mind 40% of the time. Too often we go up and we start talking and talking. And I'm guilty of this as anyone. And we have something to say. We're so excited about something to say. But if we can stop and we can listen to that person and where they're at, they feel respected. We are modeling for them. They will come back and listen to what we have to say most of the time. So I know there's crazies out there and people that aren't patient and won't do that. But honestly, most of the time, that is a reality. They will listen to you. They also found in these studies that the same physiological chemical that goes through your body when you feel heard is also the same one when you feel loved. So there's a real connection there about human beings, about feeling good about the other person. And that's why I led off about it's natural for social beings to want to have a favorable interaction. So just to bear that in mind. And those are the kinds of things we can practice later on. Asking open questions. This is a really important one, but you don't want to ask yes and no because it cuts you off. Are you going to vote? No. It's like, are you going to vote? Yes. Okay, there's nothing to talk about, or whatever. Maybe there is in that case. But the idea to get people talking about the issues, because we also want to get them revved up. It's not just about, I'm going to go vote, but are you going to tell your friends? Is it 6 degrees of separation? Are you going to like help us out? I mean, we did the super voter thing, but there's also opportunities to get more people active in their own neighborhoods. That's a whole other conversation, but you're able to do that if you actively listen and you ask open questions like who, what, where, and when. The improvisational comedians will tell you that. These are the starters. So asking those kind of questions that require more of an answer than a short cutoff yes or no allows you to listen to who they are, which then allows you to have connection with them, for them to be heard, and then for them to be receptive to you. That's the whole idea. So riffing is improvising. I mentioned that. They riff off of something they say. Then you can weave it into your own story. So often I find that in the deep canvassing training, they're speaking to the choir in a way. They're speaking to sort of advanced level canvassers, which is fine, which is great. But they don't talk a lot about this beginning stuff. And they don't talk a lot about just practical issues and tips and ideas for how you get to the door and how you approach people. So I want to give you one simple example about riffing, and then I'm pretty much done here. But I wanted to say that when I watched this TED Talk with this comedian, he gave this great example. You all probably know who Miles Davis is. He was very, very popular trumpet player back, and this was in 1968. He happened to have an intern called Herbie Hancock at the time. And Herbie was new, he was young, and he played a bad chord. I mean, a really bad chord. And Herbie Hancock could have done anything because people respected him. They knew him. That's why they came to the concert. He could have stopped the band, or he could have tried to do something with the band differently. He didn't do that. Now, of course, given he is an ace at improvising, he took that chord and he played off of that chord. He riffed off that chord and he made lemons into lemonade. So if you think that way, you can find anything that somebody has to say and you can weave that into a conversation that is relatable to you. It might even be a word or a phrase. And when you have a pause and you've listened, there's something in what they said that you can relate to, you can improvise, and you can riff off of that. The thing is, we naturally do this every day. And that's what I keep coming back to. It's automatic in our humanity, in our biology, but it is something we can become more aware of, and we can practice riffing. Okay. That's something I love to work with being a musician, because I want to bring it into human terms, right? So the buzzword of finding shared values, that's where you find the shared values. Miles took that and he shared a value, a song, a feeling with everyone, and he went there with it. And you can do that too. And the last thing I'll say here is that we all want relationships. We can build relationships this way. And I know you guys have probably heard a lot about, relational canvassing. This is how it starts. And if you can get a foot in the door, as they say, by listening, by providing a small nugget of something that you can bond to, and then grow that conversation and talk about politics, it's that simple. So the KISS is, of course, you probably already know, keep it simple, stupid. I'm trying to help newcomers understand simply how to get from A to B to start feeling comfortable about canvassing. So that's pretty much what I got. And we've got some resources where you guys can go learn more about a lot of relatable issues around this. So here we go. There are links here. Yeah, and I just want to mention, Taking It to the Streets is a service that my partner and I provide for any of the LDs or any of the organizations that want to become more aware or have new volunteers that they want to send to us, that we can just help them in a half hour, an hour at a time, and begin to practice with them so that you guys don't have to bear the burden of all of that, and we can help them grow. So that's my plug. Anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you, Chris. That was most enlightening. I like to open with a question. You know, as Mark Twain said, if we were meant to talk more than listen, well, then we'd have two mouths and one ear. When you ask them a question, ask an open-ended question. You don't want to ask them something they can answer with yes or no. You want to ask them something like, so tell me what you're concerned about. Are you concerned about reproductive rights? And as I mentioned, when they're talking, you are persuading. No need to memorize a bunch of facts, figures, and statistics. You don't want to download all of that onto the voter. You know, they're not going to remember it, and it's not going to help you make your point. What's going to help you make your point is if you acknowledge what the other person said. And when the voter has finished talking, you can always say, well, tell me more about that. You know, keep them talking. I hear, you know, what the issue is, but what makes you say that about it? And of course, one of the voters is going to ask you some question like, how many registered voters are there in LD18? You might be stumped. And don't worry about that. If they ask you a question you don't know the answer to, it's actually an opportunity. So what you can say is right up front, you know, I don't know the answer offhand, but let me get back to you on that. What's a good phone number or email that I can use to send you the answer to your question? And so find the answer and send them the question, and then wait a day or so and follow up. Follow up is what this is all about. You know, as Chris mentioned, you're building a relationship. And if you're in your own neighborhood, these are people that you're going to be visiting more than once. And if you're assigned a precinct that's reasonably close to you, you'll probably go visit them again. And the idea is that when you come to the door, they recognize you. So when I go out in my neighborhood and I have a clipboard, they all go like, oh, hi, they know my name and what are the Democrats up to and what would you like me to sign today? You know, it's so easy once you've developed a relationship. So here's the close, as they say in sales, marketing and sales. Will you be a voter in November? You know, the Democrats are prepared to fight for you. And if you have an issue, the Democrats can help you with that. The Democrats will help you and your family. So will you be a voter for Democrats? And to make it easy, when you come up to the door, so it's clear, you know, which party you represent, get the LD18 t-shirt. I got mine, and they have two kinds for women, a fitted and a V-neck. And here's a tip. Order one size bigger than you normally do, because I ordered an extra large, which would usually be way too big for me, but it fit perfectly. And then, of course, be prepared. Before you knock on the door, take a look. You'll be given the voter activation network on your cell phone called the minivan, which will tell you about the person in the house, how old they are, whether there are two people living there who are registered to vote, and so forth. So take a peek at that before you knock on the door. And I would encourage you to be very well read. Read the Arizona Daily Star. It's one of the best outlets that you're going to find. So you want to be familiar with what are the news stories, what's been reported in the paper, because you should know about that, as well as reading a national paper. More people are probably aware of national issues than they are local ones. And so my source on that is the New York Times. But the point being, be informed, stay up with the news. And that includes the radio. Now, I personally always have NPR News on. I have a little function on my cell phone where I can just say, Google, play me NPR News, and it will play me the most timely news. Otherwise, you can catch it at the top of the hour. So how do we stop Republican extremists from destroying democracy? How do we stop the Republicans from destroying democracy? The answer is be a voter. Be a voter. Top left, we've got Kristen Engel running for Congress. Beneath her is Rex Scott, County Board of Supervisors. And there in the middle, we have Priya Sundarshan, who is running for state senate in LD18, standing with the mayor of Tucson, Regina Romero. Top right, we've got Pam Powers Hanley. She wants you to be a voter. Bottom right, we've got Maria Lopez, who's the director at the Pima County Dems. She wants you to be a voter. Everybody wants you to be a voter. On the left, Nancy Gutierrez, running for State House in LD18. She wants you to be a voter. We have Priya with Lori Cinnamon, who is on the call. Hi, Lori. And they want you to be a voter. And in the left here, we see Susan Bickle, our esteemed chair of Legislative District 18. And on the right is me. And we both want you to be a voter. So with that, I think it's time to open the floor for some questions. We've done a lot of talking, and we want to hear from you. Let's go to Catherine. She's had her hand up for a while. Go ahead, Catherine.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was actually out this morning canvassing for Mission for Arizona, Mark Kelly, and the rest of the Democrats. And we ran into someone who has been completely disillusioned by all politicians. And he said he claimed he was going to vote for Mark Kelly, but for no one else on the ballot. And then he went into this long speech about how he's lived here for so many years and no one is helping him. The politicians are all corrupt. And how would you reply to something like that? I mean, the poor guy was really depressed. I just kept listening, and I was trying to be sympathetic. It'd be nice to try to get him back into voting again, but I didn't know what to say because he was so depressed.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay. Was there anything in his conversation that was positive at all? Was there any little nugget of anything, or was it all just black?
I don't remember. It was pretty negative.
Did you ask him why? Did you ask him why he believed in Mark Kelly and Mark Kelly only?
No, I didn't ask specifically. He just said he likes Mark Kelly. But you're right. I did not.
I'm just saying that might have been an idea.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If he starts talking about that person, you'll find that thing he likes, and you might relate it to someone else or some other opportunity.
Yeah, that well said, Chris. I would suggest it at some point in saying, don't you think it should be easier to vote? Or what do you think about the right of people to have public schools? What have you thought about that? Because these are all things that the Democrats are working for.
We tried stuff like that. And he just said, as soon as the politicians get into office, they become corrupt. You can't believe them. All they want is money and power. And and that was it. I mean, he didn't want to talk about any issues at all.
Wow.
But there was one he liked.
Yeah, he did say he would vote for Kelly.
Catherine and Larry, it seems to me that, Catherine, you already did something very positive for him, which is you listened to him. And more than anything else, I think he got someone in you that hurt him. And perhaps more than anything else, that will make his day better. And that very fact, I think, may persuade him to come back a little bit.
Baby steps.
Yeah. All right, let's turn to Maria Hidalgo. Go ahead, Maria.
Catherine, I've been in those kinds of calls, and I find that for me, I go to the 2020 elections, and I do say, I hear you. I know that sometimes it can feel like nothing changes, but you know what grounds me? I remember what it was like that Saturday after the November elections in 2020. And we really thought we wouldn't be able to make the kind of change we could. And what happened? Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were elected. And I saw something I had never seen before, ever. People taking to the streets, celebrating, honking, not just here in the United States, around the world. So there is things we can do. And there are times when our voices are heard. And I'm so happy that you are going to support Mark Kelly. And I think that's really important. I think what people just want to do is you want to empathize with them, acknowledge it, and then get to the point where you too can share that sense of sometimes frustration, sometimes a bit of a disillusionment, and then go into that point where you can demonstrate to them, but look at what we were able to do. And if we vote in the numbers like we did in 2020, we will continue to hold on to this democracy we value so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maria. Did you have anything in response, Chris?
I was just going to say, I just typed in there that I have found a lot of independents and young voters feel the same way, that they're all the same. The parties are the same. They're bad. One of the things, and this may just be my own bias, but money in politics is across the board. And a good thing to lead with in talking about just getting them to talk is, hey, did you hear that, that money, Stop Dark Money is going to be on the ballot? It's like something to talk about that's nonpartisan. They can't come back and say, I'm not voting for anybody. They're all corrupt. You vote for this. And then also look at who's getting all this money. Right now, the far right, there was just a huge contribution that I sent out to a bunch of people. 1.4 billion went to Leonard Leo, who's the guy that paid for all the judges that got on the Supreme Court. I mean, this guy is like, this is the largest contribution ever, and it's on the far right. So I'm just saying that you don't even have to say the word Republican and Democrat, but you can start out by talking about dark money and politics and point something like that out. I mean, extremism is the thing, and I totally agree with that whole messaging, but I don't even talk parties. I just talk extremist part of the party.
Let's ask Sonia Stupel. Go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm glad that Catherine brought up Arizona Mission, because I've been directed to them through Kirsten Engel's campaign. So at what point, or will there be coordination between the campaigns? Because, time is limited. I work, so I'll only have several weekends to do this, and want to work, from multiple perspectives.
I wanted to just let you know we are working very closely with Mission for Arizona. And this is all these young people who have moved from far away, Pennsylvania, Idaho, to come down here, and they're field organizers, and they're organizing canvases. Canvases are going on right now, but we wanted to also call your attention to the one where we're focusing on LD18, which is our district. Lori and Susan, wow, all in one place. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, I'd like to answer Sonia's question, but before we get to that, I wanted to mention something to what Catherine said. First of all, sometimes there's nothing you can say that is going to convince anybody, persuade them, and that's okay. One thing is important, and I don't think anybody here would ever do this, is to not argue with somebody and to empathize. And I've been out, I've canvassed a lot, and sometimes, it racks my brain when I go home. It's like, what could I have said? Is there anything I could have said that might have changed his mind? And sometimes there's nothing you can say. So don't feel that it's a shortcoming on your part. But one thing I do use, and I think it helps me and it helps them, is I say, I understand how you feel. I felt that way before, but, and then one of the things I say is the one thing that why I'm out here, or what keeps me going, is that I have hope things will change. And I know if I just sit at home or don't vote, nothing's going to change. So that's kind of what works for me. But I don't ever want to shame somebody or belittle somebody for not registering to vote or not voting. And it's really hard because, in our mindsets, it's just inconceivable. But sometimes there's nothing you can do, and that's okay. Just thank them and go on. And you never know, maybe because you were so polite and such a good representative of the Democratic Party, you didn't punch him in the face. And they said, no, beat that guy up, get him out of here. Maybe you left them with a good impression. Okay. Now to Sonia's question about the coordination. I'm sorry. One other thing, Catherine, is on our Canvas material, Larry showed you on screen, but I have a real live one here. And it says here, let me see, it says, we talk about values. And it talks about values. It's not Democrats or Republicans. What we try to do is contrast. And you know, this is about values. Okay, getting to Sonia's question about coordination, we are coordinating. In fact, if you've signed up to Canvas and LD18, we have 65 precincts in LD18. That's more than anybody can handle. And we want to divide and conquer. So some of the precincts have been carved out where Mission has told us we're canvassing in these precincts. So we're going to some other precincts in this next outreach, be a voter outreach. And so we are coordinating, and a lot of people do double duty. And that's just wonderful. And also our strategy and message is a little different than theirs. So some people are more comfortable with one or the other, like those kind of materials, like this and that. Our targets are a little different. We don't ever put Republicans on the list. We are only focusing on independents and Democrats. I know that Mission does put Republicans on the list because Mark Kelly is a moderate and he is trying to win people over. We have enough Democrats and independents. And then after we do this big outreach, which will go towards beginning of October, we're going to be collaborating with a number of groups on the ballot chasing. So in LD18, we are mainly going to be doing our outreach in September and the first week of October. And then after that, we're going to be collaborating with all the other organizations to do the ballot chase. There's one other thing that we're doing we try to make things fun. We have stickers, you know, everybody likes stickers. Let me see, I have some stickers here. Our canvas is about being a voter. Can we count on you to be a voter? And we're making it very positive. And if they say they're going to be a voter, we give them a sticker that says, I'm a voter. So we try to make it fun. And we have, colorful material. We also have, really excited, we have a slate card, which has all the candidates, including our LD candidates. And on the back, this is breaking news, first time ever. We are going to have the school board races because we know what's going on, that, the Purple for Parents are trying to get in and destroy our schools. And we can't let that, we can't give that up. So on the back side of our little slate card are the school boards in LD18. So it's very, our message is different. It's very important. The whole ballot is very important. And another thing we're doing is we're canvassing with candidates. We have Kirsten coming and our LD18 candidates. We're going to try to get the school board candidates to come with us. I think they will be on our canvases. And on October 3rd, everybody mark this on your calendar. No, I'm sorry, October 1st, Saturday, October 1st, Adrian Fontes is coming to LD18 to canvass with us on Saturday, October 1st. If you come to the kickoff on September 8th, I think, September 8th, I will go over all this in more detail. Did I answer your question?
All right. And, Lori, I would make the point that Democrats have made things better. Despite all Republican efforts, in Pima County now, we have voting centers. And the reason that that's important is that you don't have to know where your precinct is anymore. It's just, there were just some lines on a map. And you can go to any one of, I think, 40 or more voting centers and vote. Doesn't matter what precinct you're in. And this gets rid of an old obstruction of voting, which was that if you voted in the wrong precinct, they wouldn't count your vote. And, that's just total baloney. So do you have any thoughts, Chris? Or I see Jan has got her hand up. What do you think, Chris?
one of the things when you're actively listening to remember is that if you're listening to somebody and it's driving you nuts because it's like totally whatever. Just remember you're just listening to accept their reality. You're not listening to agree with them. So, by empathizing in the sense like you might have thought that before, but like maybe you don't feel that way now and this is why, that's fine. But even if it's just you're accepting what they're saying, yeah, I understand what you're saying. That's all you got to do. That's all I had to say about that.
All right, let's turn to Jane Lassar. Go ahead, Jane.
Hi, everybody.
Good.
First, I worked really hard on the Obama campaign. Seems like a century ago, but it wasn't that long ago. And the one thing I remember about that is that the Obama method was building things from the ground up, the grassroots up, rather than top down. It was building it one person up. And I think the LD18 canvas, I'm working on that, the plan and the development and the materials and so forth. And I think one thing that distinguishes it is that we are working in our neighborhoods. We are introducing ourselves to our neighbors. We are reaching out to people one by one who live in the same school district we live in. So it's a very localized canvas to reach out to our own neighbors. And that pivots to another point that I want to make. That is so powerful when you are at the door and you say, hi, I'm one of your neighbors. People really relate to that. And you can fudge it a little because maybe they live 5 miles away, but you're still in their neighborhood. It's their legislative district. And I think people relate to that. The other thing I want to say is it's really important to just be yourself and smile. And not get all hung up on the fact that you don't know all the policy to talk about. This is not a dissertation that you're defending at the door, okay? You're just smiling and introducing yourself. And the one thing that I want to say is if you give that friendly impression at the door and they know that you're a Democrat, that counts for a lot. Finally, everybody's talking beautifully about these long, wonderful conversations we're going to have at the door. That is a canvasser's dream to be able to have that conversation. Yeah. But guess what? Having canvassed for many years, most of them are going to look like this. Hi, I'm one of your neighbors. I'm Jane Lassar. I'm here. Okay. What do you have? I'm busy. But okay. And that they're not really even going to probably want to talk to you for that long, even to have these conversations. That's the beauty of the handout. That slate card Lori showed you with the candidates, that simple, colorful thing with the talking points. If all you do is just hand them that stuff and say, I know you're busy and you're probably so sick of people knocking on your door, but if you just take a look at what's on this card and take away one message from it, be a voter, you've done your part and you will help Arizona. And it's just that simple. And you leave them with the card. It has our web address on it. The website is going to be packed with news stories about voting and voting basics. So if you just point them to our website and the adorable little sticker to be a voter, it sounds kind of simplistic, but you've really done a lot just by doing that. So don't get hung up on policy or any of that. If you have a conversation like that we talked about, you are going to feel so amazing, but not all conversations are going to look like that at all. Right. And the other thing finally is, Chris, you need to have a canvasser hotline where people can call you with their canvassing horror stories and you can talk them down. So that's just an idea that I have for all you folks. Have fun, guys.
I have to just emphasize how great it is what you just said. And it's exactly mirroring what I'm saying, is that you cannot expect to have these big, complicated conversations. It's the approach so that you're approachable, right? Being friendly, finding something to talk about, very simple stuff. That's the human part, and that's the important part. So that's all I had to say.
And just to pick up on your point, Jane, I think it was you who said, the people who change the world are people who show up and vote. That's who count. And just because you're not having a conversation with somebody and you're leaving a flyer behind, this is a very concise flyer. You can just look at it front and back, and it's designed so that one particular issue will jump out. And, you know, we print these things because people read them.
Yeah, Jane, that's so true. That is so true that so few, and Chris knows, that so few of the interactions are big conversations. And usually, you know, people are just thankful. Oh, thank you for the information. Thank you. And they thank you for your commitment. It every time I go out canvassing, it energizes me. I come home with twice as much energy as I had when I went out, because the people, the good, you know, 90% of the time, 95, 99% of the time, it's all positive interactions. Half the time they're not home, but the times that they are home, it's all like, thank you for your volunteering, or thank you for this. And on our material in 2018, we did this. And we're doing it now, is we have an email address where people will contact us. A lot of times people leave sticky notes on their Canvas materials, say, if you have questions, call me, but not everybody is comfortable with that. So we have a generic LD18 .org email. And if people have questions about their ballot, and in 2018, there was a group of us, and we were like, had a contest of how many contacts you got. So it was kind of fun. We called it reverse canvassing. It's when people contact us. And so we do have that means for people when they do finally get their ballot and they do have a question or don't understand about voting or candidates, that they can reach us. So, but it's so true. I mean, it's a canvasser's dream to have a conversation.
One of the things that I used to hear a lot is that a voter wouldn't vote because he was afraid he was going to make a mistake. And I didn't understand what that meant for a long time until we actually created a slate card similar to this. And then when I started to canvass and I would pass this out, they would say, oh, this is exactly what I needed. And then that gave them something to talk about. And then they said, oh, now I will not make a mistake. And that was like, oh, the light bulb goes off. That's what they meant. Now I know I will not make a mistake. Now I feel confident going into the ballot box. At that time, you know, it wasn't a vote center, but this opens the door. And once you've done that, the people will be glad to talk to you. They will ask you questions. And we used to have this contest. It just cracked me up when Lori would call and say, somebody just called me and asked me a question. Yes, of course they do. You remember, you are now the representative of the Democratic Party to the person behind the door. And so when they have a question or a problem or a concern, they're going to pick up the phone and call you, hopefully. And then you've got a relationship. And once you have that relationship, then we're going. Then they're secure. They feel like, okay, now I know how to operate here as a voter.
You know, the people we're talking to are not like us. They don't know who Chris Mays is. They've never heard of Katie Hobbs. They don't know who Sandra Kennedy is. What's the Corporation Commission? This is what Susan means by don't want to make a mistake. They don't know. If they were like us, we wouldn't be talking to them. They wouldn't be on our list. They would be voters. They would have voted in 18. What kind of Democrat didn't vote in 18? So they're not like us, and they just need a little help. It's like if I had to fill out a card for the Sweet 16 on the basketball thing, I'd have to ask somebody who knew something. And so that's what they're like. They don't know. They're not informed. They don't have time. No judgment. They're busy.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lori. Thank you so much, Susan. It's so nice to have you on this call. And let me ask Chris, did you have any closing thoughts?
Oh, I've always got something to say, but I'll try to keep it short. I just want to thank everybody for hanging in and listening, and Larry for the opportunity to talk. I'm extremely committed, as we all are, to getting through the midterms and getting these Republicans out of there and voting Democrat. And I think what we've got to do is build more of an army. We've got to keep building an army. And we do that at the same time that we're canvassing. You know, for me, it's like making that relationship. Oh, this is what she does. I could do that too, right? That's what I'm about. That's what I'm trying to get to happen. Even with my little other extracurricular group called Voting for Our Lives, which is more for the young people and anybody who's apathetic. That's what I'm trying to pull them in different ways. It's all about, they know something's wrong when we don't have abortion rights anymore, and they're popping out of the woodwork. I have no idea how this happens. Tell me, show me. They're there, and we can find them as we canvass. So I really believe the approach and how the friendliness, like Jane said, you know, being there for them and giving them information, like Lori and Susan referred to, because people really don't have the information. They want it. All of these things are super important. And I'm just really happy that we're all here, and I'm happy to contribute. And please call me or email me if anybody wants to come and jump around and improvise and do some practical work around becoming aware and finding quick ways to get in there, because it's volunteers that we need as much as it is the voters.
To underscore your point, Chris, yes, we do need volunteers. I would encourage everybody on this call to visit the homepage of LD18. It's just ld18dems.org, and you'll see a button there for volunteer. And you'll be given a variety of options. You can see here, there's a little form you fill out, and you can choose what you want to do. You can be a canvasser, you can be a driver, you can be a buddy or a mentor for someone else. If there are a couple of things you take away from this program, it would be, I got active because the Republicans are extreme and dangerous. And so I'm going to visit voters, knock on their door, and ask them a question to get them talking. And then I'm going to listen. I'm going to actively listen to what they have to say. And with that, I think we can end the program. We want to thank you so much for coming today. It's just great to see everybody. And thank you, everybody who volunteered and shared their experience. And with that, we'll see you out in the field.